Pakistan. I'm very grateful to all of you for your valued participation and expertise in MAP Talk. This is our first meeting of current fiscal year, and our today's keynote speaker is our very dear friend, Mr. Tahir Malik. He's the President, Latin America region of Reckitt Benckiser. I request our President, Sayyid Abdul Lakwi, for the welcome address before the talk and discussion with Mr. Tahir Malik.
Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for taking time out from your busy schedule. And I see a lot of familiar faces, people who are very important in marketing. I see them all here. Of course, there are some veterans and some newbies also, including some from them. But it's a good opportunity for us to network. As pointed out earlier by Asfar, this is our first MAP talk in the current year. Our term started on 30th of April, and because of Ramzan, we could not hold talks earlier on. Despite the fact that we have an election day after tomorrow, we just could not miss the opportunity to let go of Mr. Tahir Malik, who is here on a private visit, I believe, for a few days. As soon as we learned that he's here, considering his achievements, we were unanimous that we must do something in his honor. And of course, the MAP talk should be held incidentally 48 hours or even less than 48 hours before the elections. It's a volatile time. People say it's a time that one should not be getting out of homes, all sorts of things. But I hope the elections will be very peaceful day after tomorrow. But nevertheless, we took this risk of holding this MAP talk today. And I'm really grateful that all of you have showed up. Tahir Malik Saab has been part of the Reckitt group in Pakistan, and currently he is the president of Reckitt Benckiser Latin America region, which is an honor because I think he's the first Pakistani to hold such position. Prior to that, he was the CEO of Reckitt Benckiser Turkey, and he has also served as Reckitt Benckiser West Asia CEO, which included Pakistan and Afghanistan. And incidentally, he joined the company in 2011, so this rapid rise that you see was achieved only in 9 years. Tahir Malik Saab has been in the FMG sector for the last 20 years or so, since he joined Procter & Gamble. And he's, as I said earlier, the first Pakistani to have the honor of heading the region on behalf of Reckitt. So, without much further ado, I would request Mr. Tahir to take the podium.
Do I need to be on the stage or can I get down there?
Very comfortable.
Thank you very much for a very, I would say, larger than life introduction. I think I don't deserve even half what you said, but I really feel honored. I was visiting Pakistan. Can you hear me well? So I just want to make sure the logistics work. I'm not the best one at holding a mic. So you will agar aage bhi chora to bata de ki I'm being a bit disruptive. I put together a few slides. I was visiting Pakistan for about a week to spend some time with the family. Also cast my vote, my right to choose the right leader. And then I spoke with Asfar, who's a dear friend, and he said, let's do something with MAP. And I said, absolutely yes. I put together a few slides, but I want to keep this discussion into a two-way dialogue. And hence I think what I'll do is I'll keep the theory very, very limited, and then we really want to open the floor for discussions and ask me lots and lots of questions. And I think I'll be more than happy if you provoke me. So I think let's make this into a true MAP, two-way dialogue. But I'll set it up as a frame. The topic is brand building. Asfar asked me and Map asked me to talk something about marketing. And I told them the last time I did marketing was 10 years ago when I was the marketing director. But then I started reflecting and I realized that I think all of us as marketers, as brand builders, we spend an awful amount of time building our brands, but we hardly find the time to step back and think through about us, because we are also brands in the corporate sector. We are brands in a group of employees, where the pyramids becomes a bit, let's say, tighter as you go up. And then I think my today's talk is all about reflecting as a group, reflecting about us, about me, about you, and then provoking each other. I think that's all about it. I'm going to leave you with some thought-provoking thoughts, and then really hope that we have a very, very intense dialogue towards the end. So I'll keep some time. How much time a little for this one? About 1 hour? Okay, so let's do 35, 40 minutes or less in the slides, and then really get into a dialogue. I'm going to repeat some of the stuff. This is a simple agenda. I grew up in PNG and RB, so we cannot start a meeting without an agenda. I put together a couple of slides, a little bit more granular about me, and then we deep dive into the topic, and then we deep dive into the dialogue. I'm proud of where I come from, so I will always start all my presentations with these logos. I graduated from Pakistan. I grew up in Pakistan. I'm an absolutely proud Pakistani. Went to St. Paul's. I was there last December for the Christmas celebration with my school. Then I went on and went to Commerce College. Probably good or bad decision, but I really wanted to not do A-levels and go to college to taste what it feels like growing up, and I think it was a good experience. And then I went to IB. I think it's, and then I graduated in '95. PNG hired me off campus, and then I did the first 15 years with Procter & Gamble, the last 7 with RB. So that's a bit about me. And I want to run you through a few slides of what I did in PNG. Start between 1995, let's say to 2011, I did in Procter & Gamble. And as I said, 2011 onwards, I joined the RB. And that's my, I call it not my second love, but my true love. PNG was my first love, let's say, within the corporation. Started in Pakistan. I think absolutely proud of this flag. We try to make sure it keeps flying high within the RB world. My first, let's call it between 95 to 2004, 9 years were in Pakistan, where I grew up as a management trainee, all the way to be the first marketing director, because we always used to have Pakistani, we always used to have expat marketing director. So I was proud that finally we got the expats out, and I was the first one for Pakistan. And then I did the last 7 to 8 years in PNG abroad, essentially in Brussels, which at that point in time looked like a second home. A small European town, headquarters of NATO. It's a small, people call it a European village, but we had a fantastic time. That's where I was the regional MD. First handling Middle East Africa out of Brussels, and then in the last 4 or 5 years handling Western Europe, which truly got me out of my comfort zone, because Western Europe was a different ballgame, different trade structure. But we had a fantastic run with Procter & Gamble, based out of Brussels, which was the headquarters back then. And then my last 2 years were in Geneva. We moved to Switzerland, where the company moved to headquarters for some tax breaks. I got promoted. I was given the business unit head with P&L responsibility, with the single-minded objective to expand laundry in Africa. And I think I lived in Geneva, but I lived mostly in Africa, traveling different countries, setting up plants, and it was a wonderful experience. Then I wanted to come back home, and I came back with RB. My first stint, RB Pakistan, 2 years, got promoted, moved to Turkey, beautiful place, I think, fantastic country. Did another 2 years, turned the business around, and in 2016, I was promoted and I was made the regional head of Latin America. When I moved, the headquarters used to be in Miami. I'm not a big fan of the US, because I think they're not a big fan of the green passport, so I don't enjoy entering and exiting out of the immigration. So I told my company it makes sense to have the headquarters in Brazil, which is a part of the country, versus flying in from the US and flying out. It was an absolute craze to be headquartered in America and run LATAM. And we moved the corporate headquarters amongst, of course, there were also other reasons, into Sao Paulo. So that's where I am, headquartered in Sao Paulo, handling all of LATAM, including Mexico, Central America, so it's a group of countries where we have active operations and support months. So that was a brief introduction about myself. And I think this Jan, I think I was very proud to be elevated to the position of the executive committee for our company. So now I also sit in the RB's executive council, which means I'm there. I'm the only Pakistani, but means flying every month to London. So I'm now a platinum member for almost every single airline. That's a side effect. So that was a brief introduction about myself. I strongly believe that in these talks, for us to have a good dialogue, it's always important to connect. So I had to introduce myself to you, who I am, and where I've come from. And I'm absolutely proud. And I think the topic today is about brand building, but it's not brand building about brands. I think it's about brand building about people. And I think that's where I'll share with you some thoughts. But I'm going to put a provocative slide, and I think the answer I've already given. What do you think are most important assets of a company? Sorry? Employees. Yeah, I think it's a very cliched term. I think we read this in books, but it is true because I'll share with you some data. I think the most important assets of the company are employees. We used to think historically that it's our brands. We have brands which are 100 years old, and brands have equity. But I think one thing you also come to terms is even brands, if they disappear, employees can build brands again. So at the end of the day, it's the group of people that a company has and the branding. And I think the same thing holds true for people. And it's easier to start with heroes because they've done something big. And I consciously do move the Kai's picture because I think then you'd say, well, that's Kai Jasmine, so let's not compare because, let's say he's the father of the nation. So I also put other heroes because, just to Abdul Salidi, I think a truly global hero, Adil Rizvi, Nelson Mandela, I think these are people who've done fantastically well in their fields, have benefited the community, but in the end have become permanent in our hearts and in our minds. And I think that's where my talk is all about. How can we be true heroes in a company where we consistently deliver some equity? I hope it's a good equity. And then the company starts recognizing us as true heroes or water workers. We did in Latin America when I took over. I was asked by the CEO to do a 20 years deep dive. Because in our last 20 years in Latin, we had 5 years of huge success, then 5 years of nosedive, then 4 years of huge success, and 3 years of decline, then 70% growth, and -5. So the graph was like a heart attack, going up and down, and they really wanted us to understand what the hell is going wrong. And then to make it more sophisticated, we also employed McKinsey to look at data mine and come back to us in terms of what could be the drivers of what we call when the business grew and what could be the negative drivers when the business grew single negative was declining. And they gave lots of KPIs, that economy, GDP, disposable income, and so on and so forth. But we simplified it all towards the end, and then we realized why did we have to hire consultants? It was all down to the management teams. Whenever we had a strong leader, a strong regional president, with strong general managers who formed strong teams, they found a way to grow. Because Latin is very volatile. It's as volatile, let's say, as this part of the world. Currencies fluctuate 20-30% overnight. Countries close down, you have to pull people out. In some parts where there's you have to move factories, you have to adjust to new regulations. You have to do the right thing, where some people force you to give right, then you have to never get involved. So you need a bit of an agility. And hence people who were, let's call it, strong leaders always found the right way to grow, and hence the company grew, and people or teams with the strongest teams messed up. And I think it was down to people. And I think that's an example. I have tons of slides I'm not going to bore you with, but it's a hardcore data where Latin America grew or declined simply behind the strength of the teams. With this, I want to get into the details, but I have one disclaimer. I'm going to share with you my top 10 learnings. I also presented it to my CEO, but I've adapted it to the MAP audience. These are my learnings. Now, they could be right, they could be wrong. And hence, I think my job is to provoke you with my learnings. And I think if at the end of the day, I make you think, I think I've done my job. And I think towards the end, I also want this to be a two-way dialogue because I want you to make me think, but I also feel rewarded. So let's keep the discussion very, very interactive. I just have 10 or 12 thoughts to share, and I really want to bring this house into a dialogue. But I want to start with one preamble. The worst thing that could happen to a brand or an employee or people as you get lost in the details. So even in a personal branding, the bell curve works. You have the middle 70%, people lost in the masses. I mean, they're nice people. I mean, they're not polarizing. They're good, not great, and they disappear in the masses. Then you have the 10, 15, 5-10% cutting edge on the above side, who stand for something, who are disruptors, who are game changers, who are business builders, who are organization builders. and then you also have the laggards. I mean, sometimes you are negatively notorious. And hence, to me, the worst thing that could happen is you get lost in the masses. And hence, my first walk is for you. I hope not the negative polarity, where you're known for the bad stuff, but at least be positive polarity, where you stand for something, and then be true to who you are. One example I used to always give when I used to work for P&G was in detergents that clean well. And I think that's how it is. Would we try not to stand for harsh, for great cleaning, but you want to be a well-rounded detergent? No, you won't have. And I think that's a classical example, even in our personal life or in our corporate life, where I think you've got to find a way. What are your strengths? Nurture them and stand for what you are, and then be consistent to this, because you don't want to get lost in the middle and get lost in the masses, because then the company, this world will forget you. I'm going to share with you my top 10 learnings, which have been sanitized in the last 23 years of hopping 3 continents and having the pleasure to have worked in 6 countries, from English speaking to French speaking to Portuguese speaking to Spanish speaking to Urdu speaking, which are Pakistanis, which has been a pleasure. So the first one is everybody has brains. I think that's and especially if you come this far, we are smart. I think we're in the top 1% of the society, top 2% of the society, because I think that's how life cuts people out. People who never get the opportunity to go to school, then you have dropouts in school, dropouts in college, dropouts, people who couldn't get into a master's degree, dropouts who get a degree but can't get into a company, so at the end of the day, the fact that the audience in this room, always, I think you've got to be clear that it's not about are we smart or not. We are smart, otherwise we wouldn't be here. But within this smart audience, some of you will make it to the top, all of you will not. Now, it's a harsh reality. And hence, I think one difference that will separate the water walkers or the heroes from the above average is how strong we use our intellect, the brain power. And I think that's the one thing where we separate in RB and also in P&G, already the power of minds. Smart people who have potential to grow up versus the others. And I've used a simple example because I don't want to bore you. I think it's down to 3 things where people who use their intellect better versus the ones who use this a bit less better. The first one is you've got to find time to dream. If you stuck in a rut, 9 to 6, working on a weekend, sometimes even doing some stuff on a Sunday, and then Monday again is another crisis. There goes a year, there goes 2 years, then something is not working. Because time is taking more of you, you're getting lost in the wave. You've got to step back and think, and dream for you, and dream for the company. And then, obviously, once something comes up, then you align this with your boss and try to drive this. But one thing I've learned is the difference between water walkers and swimmers is water walkers dream walk, and they find time to dream. Second, I think having the right balance on thinking between big picture and data driven. In my 22 years, I've had fantastic people who have IQ 2x than a lot of our leaders. But they're data geeks. They get lost in the data, they come up with some tables with analysis, with granularity, but then don't know what to do with it. And I call them Intel inside. So Intel, nobody has seen वो computer के बाहर नहीं देखा किसी ने, वो अंदर ही रहता है, वो ऊपर नहीं जा सकता. So that's one extreme. The other extreme is people who just think they're mavericks. एक कट से करेंगे सारा है, तो हमें सूंघता हूँ तो पता चल जाता है कि क्या करना है. And then half the time they're doing businesses. I think that's the second part which separates water walkers from dreamers, to have that big picture, zoom in, zoom out, zoom in, zoom out. I once read a presentation by Colin Powell, not my favorite guy, but एक चीज याद है उसने कहा था कि the leader is sharp enough to find out any errors the teams are making, which means that he has to be hawk-eyed, कि नीचे देख के पकड़ ले कि जी कहाँ गलती की जा रही है. And I think that's why in Latin America, I'll give you a simple example, 17, 18 countries, you get lost. Do you go into the details? Every country has a general manager or a CEO. So they run the show. So what do we do as a regional team? Do we push them? Do we get involved in their business? I think that's why we have to try as a regional team the right balance between driving specific issues of granularity, but then also zooming out to look at the big picture. How do we do profit pockets? How do we drive? If Venezuela is disappearing, Venezuela was our biggest growth driver. 3 साल पहले Venezuela मुल्क बंद हो गया because civil war हो गई. So how do we get the Venezuelan growth, which has disappeared, from the other countries? So zoom in, zoom out. I think that's the right balance. And I think the third one, which is very important, is data versus gut. I think this you have to absolutely strike the right balance. One thing I learned from my CEO is he looks at some basic data and then they make up their mind through gut. I think that's what we call judgment. So that's what I call the bizarre triangle, where smarter people use more intellect than the rest, and then start standing for this guy has the power of minds, or this girl has the power of minds. I think that's what I call triangle, which allows us to think straight, which allows us to dream, have the big picture, left reality, and to have strike the right balance between data and gut and have the right judgment. But at the end of the day, the middle of the triangle is about making decisions. The worst thing happens to an organization is they're headed by a leader, and all of you are leaders because you're leading in some shape or form a business as an organization. Or even as a student, you're leading yourself because you're leading yourself into growth trajectory. You have to make decisions. People who are scared hide behind not making decisions. एक डेटा और निकाल दो, ये नीलसन से ब्रेकआउट निकलवा लेते हैं, अगले हफ्ते देखते हैं, सेल्स से पूछ लेते हैं, and things keep getting procrastinated, and that's the worst thing, decision paralysis. So good or bad, keep decisions simple, and I think keep decisions actionable. And I think these are some of the stuff. I think one thing which I find very inspirational for me is be breakthrough, try to change the game, but yet be simple. I think a lot of times people get lost in complexity. They can't even simplify key issues. At the end of the day, if I'm simplifying, and I may be wrong, but if we're in FMCG, which is selling consumer goods, so we're selling it to housewives, to ghar chalate hain. So it cannot be complicated. It's simple sizing, pricing, brand building. It has to be simple, but once or twice, you have to make it bold and take risks. I want to give you a couple of examples to make this rich. When I took over Turkey, the business was declining, and when I left, the business grew 18%. And amongst other things, one thing that my team did was a lot of competitive analysis. And one thing what we found out was in a country, Turkey back then was going through hyper-devaluation. So when we went, the lira was about close to a dollar, went up to 4. So it was sliding. And our ability to make quick decisions on pricing, sizing, down counting, looking at magical price points, cutting some marketing spend, putting it in pricing, this was absolutely the speed at which we had to decide was unbelievable. And the companies that were fast in making good decisions were winning, the companies that were lost or were too scared to make some tough decisions were losing. And I think we, at the time when I took over, were a bit slow in making decisions because it was an extraordinary situation. And I think that's what we did. We started making decisions, sometimes wrong decisions, but we declogged the system in terms of managing this as a hyperinflationary country by taking quick pricing and sizing. That's one example. A simple one. It's something close to my heart because I started my career with this, and I did also a case study with Lums on this one. When Ariel launched in Pakistan, and Ziba is there, so I think she was the proud partner. I think it was all about disrupting the industry because Surf, Bright, Express, all of them was 90% share. There was no room for another player to come in. And then this brand decides to come in. This is 20 years ago, 25 years ago, 1997. And it was all about disrupting the market. The market was as cartons. Ariel came in polybags. The market had 100 gram, 200 gram, 400 gram. Ariel came in 80, 120 because 80 grams was one dose. So disrupted size and pricing. Advertising was all about slice of life or the run of the mill, and they started with Mera Naam Yasmin and Mera Mia Sabzi Bechta, and it was a big talk of the town. It was a bold move. Some people say it was too bold, but it built a brand, and now it's a big success. That's one example. And then I don't want to go into the second one. First is making use of your intellect, making quick decisions, simple decisions, having the right balance. I think the second one, which at least we've seen in RP, which is a company which doesn't have the best systems, is absolutely is how strong our managerial courage is. At the end of the day, it's all about how courageous we are as individuals, as leaders. Are we willing to challenge the status quo? Are we willing to even take on our boss, who sometimes could be wrong? Or we're too scared? Do we have the courage to make bold moves? Do we have the courage to speak up when things are not right? Do we have the courage to take risks? And do we have the courage to even fail, learn, and get up and start running? I think that absolutely sets apart It's all about, I give an example which you guys can relate to, nobody relates to in Latin America or even in Turkey. When I say it all depends कि आप cricket खेलने किस तरह आए, टुक करने आए, या you want to hit big scores, and I think that's your posture. If you come in to hit big scores, if you go in with defensive mode, you never deliver, and in the end आप defend ही करते रहते हैं. वो मैं example मैं convert कर लेता हूँ, जो इंग्लैंड ने अपने साथ किया था, कि एक गोल करें, तो वर्ल्ड कप जीत जाएंगे, they went down. But nevertheless, it's all about the courage, about the ability to take risks, about the ability to fail. 17 years ago, I was interviewing for some company. Asked me कि आप AG में बोर हो रहे हैं, इधर आ जाएं, cola company. And I just went for the heck of it. And they asked me to take risk. I said yes. I'm very pro risk. And the CEO asked me, well, give me examples of when you failed. And I said, no, I'm smart. I never fail. So I take calculated risk and I go in and say, you're kidding yourself. Because if you have the courage to take risks, you're bound to fail. If you're always winning, then you're playing too safe. Because then you're not taking risks. And I think that I still remember, and I think that's what at least we follow. My company promotes, we promote in our leadership teams, we promote in our employees to take risks and fail and learn. If you're not failing, then you're playing too safe. And hence I think it's good to fail. Otherwise, you're absolutely playing too safe. And I want to give you an example, my study going back is, PNL posture. When I took over Pakistan, I mean, they gave me a PNL. And I said, well, it's not going to take me to glory. I want to grow 20. And the company laughed it off. Are you kidding? We've heard, all we've heard from Pakistan is the Afghan war and bombs. We say, yeah, but the life continues. And then we put a P&L posture, which was risky, because you can only grow double digit if you want to invest. And then we have to the company will allow us to invest. And then the business grew, the business responded. So it was a riskier P&L posture. Previous management decided to play a safe P&L posture कि छोटा number commit करते हैं, छोटे पैसे लेते हैं, life would be easy. And I think it all depends how much managerial courage we want to display and you want to display. And hence you want to go into the top 5% and what? Or you want to play safe in the middle 70% and get lost. Third, it's all about heart. I think what makes people different than machines is the heart. I've seen passion driving things. And hence, I want to keep it very simple. I think I'm very passionate about my people and about my business. And I think one thing which I see in successful people who are fantastic brand builders of themselves are they absolutely passionate. They drive their projects with obsession, and they convert this into a love affair. I think both story and then they forget about the work-life balance, weekends, because they enjoy. And I think that's where if you hit that stroke, if you're having fun in what you do, then I hope at some point in time you have this love affair between you and your core work, and then everything else will fall in place. I think you will stop worrying about work-life balance. And I'll give you a personal example. And it's a true example. In 2012, we were in Azad Kashmir, Muzaffarabad, or something, and we were flying कोई पहाड़ी चढ़ रहे थे, मुझे लगा मुझे हार्ट अटैक हो गया, नहीं हुआ था. Then we went and came down and got some tests done and everything came out clear. But they said आपको blood pressure and I said नहीं मुझे नहीं है. And then in the end we concluded कि अच्छा बेहतर है गोली खा लेते हैं versus नहीं खाते because they convinced me that the risk are too much. And the doctor said you've got to take 2 weeks off and stay home and breathe. And I'm going to snatch away your iPhone and because my mind was stuck. ये शेयर पे क्या हो रहा है और हमने डेटॉल के लिए प्रमोशन लॉन्च किया, हाउ इज इट? And then I go to the doctor. My recreation is I want to get involved in the company. And then he said, let's go ahead. But I think it's a true story. You should have fun if you're delivering business. And a lot of these winners that go up, for them winning or playing a good game is fun. So it's not a job. And that's where if you have fun, that's where the passion comes in. And passion can make 1 + 1 = 2. I think that absolutely sets apart. I can give you, I work in that time. People, and before that I worked in Pakistan, passionate people. Then I worked in Turkey. So I've been blessed. But I also worked in Brussels where people are, उनको हंसने में भी takes them 10 minutes के वो करना. And I have more fun in this part of the world where it's warm, but it's an absolute pleasure having people who are absolutely passionate because they can achieve new stars. They sometimes can get to be impossible. So never let the passion be the driver, but make it your hallmark. My CEO calls me a guy who was fired in the Valley. Now, I'm not an ABM, I'm a regional president, but they say you're the only president who has fired in the Valley, and then they make me do some lectures to convince the other European presidents how can they grow 7%, not 2, because the data tells them in Europe you can only grow 2 GDP growth. So the 2 to 5 takes you with the passion, because then you start doing stuff which is out of the box. That's number 3. 4, always be surrounded and become yourself the guy or the girl who can make it happen. Myself, I have zero tolerance for people who come up with excuses. Our previous year used to say the difference between delivering and not delivering is a mechanical set of excuses. At the end of the day, you've got to find a way to deliver. And you always find a way. I'll give you an example. When we were in Turkey, there was 100% evaluation. Classical example, go back to the company and tell them the targets are wrong. Because you gave us targets when the currency was stable. We come in, there's an outburst, whatever, the political turmoil. So let's renegotiate the targets. A lot of people do this. But we decided, my leadership team convinced me that we shouldn't do this, we'll find a way. And then we found we did everything practical under the sun. Everything right, not wrong. Because I'll make a point. It's all about doing the right stuff always. To organize all great building blocks. When I got promoted and moved to Latin America, people said, this is going to be a kiss of death, because you're moving to Latin when Brazil is collapsing, where there are riots in Venezuela, where Mexico will go down because Trump will win the war, and Argentina is going to hyperinflation. So there goes all your region. And so we'll find a way. And I think so far so good. In 3 years now. Next year I'm going to move again. But it's been a beautiful run. Everything happened. And some more stuff happened on top of all of this. But the team found it. They're always incremental building blocks that you can activate. If you're in sales, there are always stuff you can do. There are countries you can open. We found out that we were not shipping to Uruguay, Paraguay, where somebody has a bigger business. This is why. So we closed some countries, we opened some countries, we did some benchmark. We found out that we were terrible in Caribbean. There was small business. And then we exploded in Caribbean. We found out that Central America, Panama, which you guys have heard from a negative position. Panama is for us a big market. And I tell you something again, they can't get Panama. But it's now growing double digit. So you always find Brazil goes down, Panama goes up. And that's how we manage portfolio. But always try to find the way with the positive mindset, with the solution orientation, with the orientation to remove examples. But one thing that
हमारे मुल्क को तो चेंज कर दिया पनामा ने
जी
पनामा ने हमारे मुल्क को चेंज कर दिया
That's so true. उस पे भी क्यों नहीं करेंगे? I also have wanted, but as per told me, map is always non-political. So you see examples, stay away from politics. Otherwise, you could have made this fun. But that's how it is. I think it's making it happen. It's always making it happen. आप भी अगर अपने इर्द-गिर्द देखें, you would have people जो हमेशा excuses बनाते हैं. And they're always right. Difficult to say no. कि जी ये हो गया, लेट हो गया, गाड़ी टूट गई, वो देखें नीचे ट्रैफिक जाती. And there are people who find a way. लेट भी हो रहे तो गाड़ी से उतर के वॉक करके आ जाते हैं. So always find a way, because अल्लाह ने भी मदद करते हैं उन लोगों की जो जोर लगाते हैं. Then you see, things start falling in place. An example मैंने इसमें कोई ऐसा दे रहा है नहीं कुछ भी नहीं. So I think we talk this. One thing I learned was you could be the smartest person under the sun, but if you don't know how to communicate to the company, I think you are at a competitive disadvantage. और सारी कंपनी कहती है कि जब कम्युनिकेशन नहीं लेते, doesn't matter, we're not in, और मैं पाकिस्तान में बात कर रहा हूँ यहाँ पे इंग्लिश उर्दू, but Latin America में भी कहती है कि communication doesn't matter, Spanish बोल लो, Portuguese बोल लो, but no matter which language you speak, you've got to speak the language that your company speaks. But at the end, you've got to get your recommendations through to your management. And I think people who can communicate better always have a cutting edge versus the others. Especially for the students, I think we've got to work on this. I was a terrible communicator when I was in school. I didn't speak good English, I was scared. And then I developed this fear कि मुझे भी स्कूल यहाँ नहीं है, मैं अच्छा नहीं हूँ, because लोगों ने कहा था क्योंकि तुमने किताबें नहीं पढ़ी, उम्र निकल गई है, वो लेवल में आ गए, तो अब कैसे इंग्लिश अच्छी होगी? But then we found a way. Commerce college में तो इंग्लिश थी नहीं, उर्दू बोलते थे. But then IBA जाके we found a way, presentation करके, and then when you realize that you got to do something about it, then you do something about it. And hence I think a few things that I want to talk to you about is, in corporate world it's all about storytelling. So yes, this key visual of this grandfather telling a story to the grandchildren where there's a moral in the story, it holds true in corporate world. Because unless you can sell a story to your management, your recommendations will never go through. I'll give you a classical example. I was the head of economy, and we went to South Africa, where Unilever had an 80% share, and we had to set up a plant, which means millions of dollars of investment. And they would have fell into debt. So we worked 1.5 years to make a plan, and we had to present this to our CEO back then, AG left me. And we flew to Cincinnati. And PNG is very hierarchical. The CEO was on the 11th floor, I don't remember. And then his agenda changed. And then we said, you want 3 hours? 2 hours. We were in the standby. 1 hour. Now you have to do this in 1 hour, and if he signs off, it's a go. And in the end, what we got was 5 minutes. And they say, go up from ground floor to the 11th floor in there, and then walk away to the room because he has an investor meeting. And then let's see, he'll reschedule, or maybe they squeeze 2 years of hard work in an elevator speech. And it's a realized that we have to know elevator speeches, otherwise you will not be able to get stuff done. And then we got it signed because I think it's a 17 share area. So then they launched it after I left the company. But he signed off on the record. So that's a live example where I think communication works out. I grew up in PNG, which is very, very tough on these one-page memos. Reckitt is a bit less. But if you can squeeze things on one page, if you can write a 10 million or 100 million investment on one page, I think you've cracked it. So I want to leave the students with the challenge that impose yourself this one-page memo, self-inflicting injury, and then you start forcing yourself into thinking straighter, thinking crisper, thinking sharper. That's all I speak. But communication is not about just written, or also about verbal, but also about active listening. A lot of people who are good communicators, good written oral communicators don't listen. And I think at the end of the day, you've got to find a way to also listen, because that's what life is all about, exchanging views. So that's the fourth one, communicate well. And I think the numbers are bunching up. Anyways, we moved up to 2. Resilience. A lot of people say Pakistanis are resilient, and we are. And it's not because my boss once asked me, my existing boss is a Dutch guy, and he told me last month, we were having a dinner, he says, you're resilient because you're Pakistani. I said, of course, I'm proud. But he said, yes, but you guys grew up in a tough environment, so no wonder you're resilient. And then I told him, absolutely not, because schools are better than yours. We are resilient because we are more competitive. We are resilient because our parents inculcate the art of winning. We are resilient because we don't have a plan B, because there's no social security to look after us. We are resilient because state will not give us free medical, so everybody wants to win. So it's not resilient because we will be there, it's resilient because we want to be. And then the dialogue, where we exchanged Dutch versus Pakistanis, and obviously, typical European, they didn't know some of the stuff. But I think that's by design. I think this is in our DNA. So I don't think I'm going to oversell this to you, because I think if you've come this far, you've got to be resilient. Otherwise, you would have dropped out of school or college or university or somewhere. But make this into your core strength. I'm sure it's there, but I'm challenging you to make this into a core strength, because this will go a long way. And this will go a long way in the corporate world, because life does get you on the floor. That's life. As they say, I'm sorry for French, but shit happens. Now we can cry about it, but get up and start running. And one thing which I love about resilience and I love about Turkish was extremely passionate. One flaw that nation had was when things were not working, the huge passion became negative. And then you can see this in the Brazilian football. I mean, it's one of the best teams, but when chips are down, they give up too easy. They don't fight back. And I think that's what we have in our blood. I think we've got to keep nurturing this. Life will get us down. We've got to start fighting and start running again. And that's what sets apart water walkers from let's call it swimmers, or heroes from good employees. I want to give you a personal example. When I was the CEO of Pakistan, I spent 8, 9, 10, 11 years in Europe. I'd come back from a consumer goods company. They also gave me pharma. So in my first month, I was learning about pharma, the Pharma Bureau, the pharmaceutical, the Ministry of Health, which is not the best industry in the world, and how to be honest to the UK Bribery Act, but still run the business. And then one fine day, I got a call that my plant manager has been kidnapped. And it was 1 month, so I came from PNG, I called to the corporate security and said, well, sort it out. They said, well, we don't have a corporate security, you are the CEO, so it's your headache. You sort it out. And then the next 24 hours were hell. But I learned one thing, which is how to be resilient. Because the guy was an express kidnapping, and then he was sold to a gang in Layari. And then the Layari gang finally sold him to a gang in Afghanistan, and by the time he negotiated the ransom, he was about to cross the border. But we managed to sort it out, otherwise I think at least he would have been gone for 6 months and out of our hands. And this example of, I'm not a technical expert on how to negotiate kidnappings with ransom. But we found a way. I mean, we stayed up because, my unmarried wife used to call me up, and when she was crying, she said, well, it's God and it's you, so I don't know, just get him home. So I felt the pressure. And then we made some calls. We took some risk. I convinced the company. We charged it into our P&L. And every minute it was no. उनको 1000 के नोट चाहिए थे. इतनी गति. Then I called the friend of mine from Barclays. रात के 3 बजे गड्डियाँ निकाले हैं. ये क्या है? So it was a team effort. But if you were to say what did I remember, all through those 24 hours, where we always felt that it's gone. And we were saying, at least we tried. At least I started to feel good that I tried. It was all about resilience, never give up. And then, and this is a personal example where lives were important. And then we realized that it's kya galti ki thi or kya ki. But this is about resilience. Never fall into the trap of me. Always fall into the trap of we. Because at the end of the day, you have to grow teams as you grow up. It's not about the personal growth, it's about growing teams. And I think water walkers or heroes are all about developing teams. But that does not mean, I think that this point is also abused. लोग समझते हैं कि मुझे most popular boss बनना है, तो उसको निकालेंगे तो वो बुरा वाला कहेगा, उसको भी रख लेते हैं. It's about making tough calls. But it's about raising the bar. It's about getting the right people on the bus. It's about challenging them. It's about coaching them. It's about building a bond. When a team becomes a bond, it becomes a brotherhood. It's fun. And giving them the glory, but also earning their respect. You've got to be known as the leader who will make tough calls. If they don't deliver, you show them the door. Look into their eyes and tell them, this is why we're showing you the door. And RB is a very cutthroat company. I think a lot of people say, well, people are fired. Of course they are, if they don't deliver. Because at the end of the day, we're a corporate company. All companies do the same. We're just open about it. Other companies mince the words and still. So RB has one of the lowest firing ratios, but we talk straight to people. These are your work plans. We give you 3-year goals and grow, and always find a way to help them grow. But always be honest to your people, help them grow, but be tough. But it's not about me, it's about us. Right? That's what sets apart water walkers from not the best winners. My boss once told me I like lucky CEOs. So you better be lucky if you want to stay in my team. And then I started thinking, and I did a bit of philosophy as well, कि luck क्या होती है? And at least for myself, I put down on a piece of paper, how can you be lucky? And I'll tell you my learnings. You can be lucky if you're grateful. सबसे पहले you have to thank God for giving you this opportunity. बाहर में जब देखें लोग गाड़ियाँ भी नहीं चलाते, खाना भी नहीं मिलता. अफ्रीका में देखें, अमेरिका में देखें, कपड़े पहनने को नहीं मिलते जो गरीब लोग हैं. So we've got to start by being absolutely grateful to God for giving us, for getting us this long, and whoever is your support system, to our parents, because I think they've been behind us. You have to be humble. If you really want to be lucky, you have to be humble. The moment आपके अंदर ज़रूर आ गया, आपकी लक चली जाएगी. Absolutely. You have to be humble. I have 4 GMs reporting to me, 2 from Stanford, 1 from Harvard. तो बचपन में ख्वाब देखा करता था कि जी हार्वर्ड जाएंगे, वो नहीं जा सके because ना एडमिशन मिला ना पैसे थे. And now I have these guys who are my reportees, and I went to IBM. And I think I'm smarter than them because I believe in my company. That's why I'm their boss. But I also believe that it's luck. And my definition of luck is God is kind, because I've stayed humble. And all these people like me or my leadership team who have done well have stayed humble. They have their feet on the ground. They work hard. You can do some shortcut by working hard. मेहनत करेंगे तो कहते हैं अल्लाह मेरी मदद करता है. कोई शॉर्टकट नहीं होता कि कट मार के निकल जाएंगे. मेहनत करें, किस्मत आपके साथ रहेगी. You have to stay inquisitive because you have to be a learner for life. You have to learn new skills and keep reinventing yourself. And don't bother about following stereotypes. हमारी कंपनी में 3 साल पहले क्रेज चला था डिजिटल एट हार्ट. उस सीईओ ने कहा डिजिटल एट हार्ट या 5 साल पहले कि ओबामा ने ब्लैकबेरी लगाई हुई थी. सब आईपैड लेके आते थे, नोट्स लिखते थे और व्हाट्सएप करते थे, वीचैट करते थे. And I told my CEO, I'm not a digital guy, तो मैं क्या करूँ, मैं iPad खरीद लिया, but सेव चीजें सेव ही नहीं होती. Then I said I'm going to go back to who I am. मैं अपना पेन पेपर लेके जाता हूँ, old school notes लिखता हूँ, बाद में टाइप करता हूँ. And he told me, my LATAM's president is very old school, because he's authentic. And I think you should never try to do what you're not. I'm not a digital guy, and you won't see me with gadgets. I prefer my notepad and my conventional school में जो notes लिखा करते थे, उस तरह meeting में notes लिखता हूँ, फिर उनको type करता हूँ. So be authentic, be yourself. Don't try to be who you're not. And my second last point is live your legacy. बहुत सारे कहते हैं कि हम when we're long gone, हम चाहते हैं लोग हमें इस चीज़ के लिए याद करें, कवर पे फूल चढ़ाएं और याद करें कि वो एक टीम थी जिसने पाकिस्तान में ब्रिटिश अमेरिकन टोबैको लॉन्च किया था और इतने पैसे कमाए थे. That's after you're gone, but I think you should live your legacy. Because at the end of the day, you spend more time at work than you do with your family, so this better be fun. So you have to enjoy the journey, not the end result. If you're enjoying the journey, it's thank God it's Monday, then it's fine. If it's not, then find another job or do something different, because otherwise you won't be able to excel. And I think the important thing that we can drive